I'm just getting one or two more things taken care of here. All right, good. Welcome. Welcome to another month of Crystal Conversations with me. I'm Mary Jo Feely, and if you're new to my channel, I think there's going to be hopefully a lot that you're going to have an opportunity to learn about when it comes to working with gemstones and crystals to support our body, mind, and spirit well-being. Also, if you're brand new, I'm just going to give you a little bit of kind of a rundown of how I typically will do this live event. There is a chat window. I've already put several links into the chat. The chat includes a link to my webpage, Fourth Dimension Healing in Stillwater, Minnesota. And that is my private healing practice where I offer energy and crystal healing sessions and also mentoring sessions. And I also do have some live classes from time to time that I actually offer right through my practice. Also listed is a link for the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies. Now, that is my online school, and that is where a large amount of my classes are offered. And my courses are offered in a blended model, such as having self-paced coursework that you move through at your own pace. That includes downloadable content, videos, audio, guided meditations. I include quizzes because I think it's important for us to kind of make sure that we are understanding the material rather than just kind of glazing over it. And so that is available through the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies. And I have both free mini courses as well as paid courses in Reiki, energy healing, and crystal healing. Also, I have posted the link to my podcast, the Ask, Learn, Heal podcast. And you can find that wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's through Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There are lots of different ways to access it. And also, I have a website that you can actually go to. And so you'll see that as well. I've also included a link to my online shop. And the reason I do that is twofold. One is hopefully you will get your mind thinking about healing and working with crystals, and you're going to want to learn more about them. You can go to my shop. You can sort by whether it is a particular stone you're looking for or some of the qualities. Maybe you're looking for gemstones or crystals that can support one of the 7 major chakras that we have in our body. You can sort and filter through the gemstones and crystals that I have available and learn more about them. And then, of course, there may be something you're interested in or having more conversation about. You can do that too. So note the chat. I do not include the chat in the replay once I will post it publicly to YouTube, so you won't see that. So if you're curious, you can always reach out to me and I'd be happy to send you those links, okay? So today I am going to be answering questions, and I always really appreciate the questions I get because it doesn't really matter if we're brand new to working with crystal healing or if we've been doing this for a while. We're always kind of going a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. And so the first thing that just pops into my mind is that I'm a gardener and I've been gardening pretty much my whole life. And every season I learn something new about planting and the earth and how to nurture the garden. And so for me, when it comes to crystal healing, first of all, there is no silly question because we all have lots of questions, and that's why I'm here to help kind of navigate the questions that are arising for you and to be able to help you slowly kind of nurture and develop and grow your understanding of work with and experience with the crystals and gemstones that you are bringing into your life to support well-being. If you are a healing practitioner, perhaps you're a Reiki healer or a crystal healer or have some kind of healing modality, it may be that you are interested in learning how to kind of bring those together and bring crystal healing into your environment and into the other work that you do. This is a place where you can ask those questions. And that's, for example, a perfect question that might show up in the next month or two, simply for us to explore a little bit further. Okay. So I do have a number of questions. If I don't get to all of them, I will start with the ones that I don't get to next month. And I always do reach out directly to the person who submitted the question so that they get their question answered. So we're going to dig right in. And I will do my best to remember to check the chat. All right, so this is a really interesting question, and it's kind of a follow-up from last month. So if you have not yet had a chance to take a look at last month's replay, you will be able to find it here on my channel, and you can explore what kind of was talked about then. Here's the question. Last month, you talked about how to combine crystals with the elements for healing. You also said that fire and water are two ends of the same type of energy. That got me thinking. Instead of using both a fire and a water crystal, are there any crystals that combine them together? Brilliant question. And this is to me so amazing, is that here we talked about something last month, and that was about working with the elements and how to bring those different elements into our work with crystals. And then this person started getting some other thoughts about that, and that led them to the next question. That's like being the gardener again, starting one year and a few years later, few seasons later, there's more that's being unearthed. Really great question. So last month, we talked about the various elements, earth, fire, water, wind, and storm, and how they kind of impact our life. I'm not going to go into that. I have lots of videos about that. You can certainly find them. And from time to time, you'll see me actually in the replay link, like right up here, I believe is where it shows up for you. Another little video of mine that might help lead you to the next step of answering some of your questions that are arising. So we were talking specifically about fire and water and them really being two ends of the same polarity. So I have a pen here. I'm going to just grab it. I'm going to show you. So here's the pen. And let's say this end is fire and this end is water. We vacillate back and forth depending on what's going on in our life as to being one or the other. And of course, ideally, we want to be fairly balanced in the center. And so when we think about that, as this person who submitted the question asking, instead of working with both a fire and a water crystal, are there crystals that could be combined together? Yes, there are. So I have first a couple examples of a fire stone, which is golden tiger's eye. There's a little earth in there, but it's mostly fiery, and you can get that sense if you've ever seen a piece of golden tiger's eye. It's pretty shiny and it's pretty brilliant and it's fiery. You just kind of can get that sense. Then there is a piece here of green moss agate. This is some earth, so it's got that kind of a settling quality, but it's also watery. So in some ways, we've got both that fire and water represented in two stones, and we can work with those. And I'm going to set those way over here. We can work with stones that have both. And it's not particularly common to find, in my experience, stones that resonate with both fire and water. But I'm going to show you a couple. The first being a piece of blue calcite. Now, calcite is a calcium carbonate, and it always will have a fire quality to it. And yet, you will find calcites in a wide variety of colors because other minerals are contained within them as well. And the minerals combined within the blue calcite bring in more of this watery kind of soothing, calming energy frequency, that it resonates with both the fire, that is where calcite lives is fire, and then with that water element resonance through the minerals that bring this blue hue into this stone. So this would be a stone that you could work with to help support that rebalancing of that water fire polarity. So when it's really wobbly, we can be really hot and mad. We can be really weepy. Now we're really snarly, and now we're really, really sad. And so we kind of are dropping back and forth, and we do want to land much more in a balanced state so that we feel better. And I would say everybody around us is going to appreciate that, because we're going to feel better and they're going to feel better too. So this would be one example that you could work with. And you can have a larger piece like this. If it's this large, I would say this is a nice piece to work with if you're going to be meditating with it and holding it and centering, perhaps doing some meditation work around guided imagery, chakra balancing. It could be that you are working with breath work and reestablishing and resetting your nervous system through the work with breath. Working with a piece that's about this big could work really well. If you're going to start laying it on your body, you may find a smaller piece is a little bit more comfortable, and you can check out my shop and get a sense of what some of those different sizes are that you might be able to work with. Now, another stone that is on the fire and water combined resonance is Larimar. And I did talk about Larimar a few months ago. I guess I'd have to look back to find out exactly when I talked about that. Again, if you're new to my channel, what I do as I set up the replay is I put in timestamps for each of the topics and each of the questions that are asked. So you'll be able to find what you're looking for rather than having to move through the entire replay if you don't want to do that. So Larimar comes from the Dominican Republic, and it is this beautiful volcanic stone. It's blue pectolite. And so we've got, again, this fire origin, really, right? It comes from volcanic activity, and yet it's also nestled right in the middle of the Caribbean. And so that's such a standout kind of metaphor for the kind of balance that this particular stone can help you with. And when it comes to working with these two, a question you may ask yourself is, okay, so I have a piece of Larimar and I happen to have a piece of blue calcite. Which would be the best stone to work with? And I get that question asked all the time. In fact, it was just asked again yesterday to me. And I would say is that if you have two stones, and I'm serious about this, you set them in front of you or you hold them in your hands and you go quiet. You just stop, close your eyes if it helps you, and just sense. It might be that one feels a little bit stronger to you, or you might look at them and go, wow, I just keep looking at this blue calcite. Even though this other one is so pretty, I'm really drawn to this blue calcite. That's the way to select a stone. So when we're working with crystals and gemstones for healing, there is a relationship that we have with the stone. If you think about being in relationship with anybody, whether it is somebody that's helping you at a grocery store or at the gas station or somebody within your family, there is an interconnection that takes place, whether it's a very brief, kind of very casual conversation or a much more in-depth relationship. You've got that interconnection with that other person. That's what we're learning to do with the gemstones and crystals as well. So there's nothing magical about the Larimar, and there's nothing magical about the blue calcite. And I know they can also be very helpful if I develop a relationship with them. Just like you may have a whole lot of people, that you could call if you are having a situation that you want to talk out, you may find that there's one or two that you're really sensing would be the most helpful. That's that kind of idea that you might find as you're working with determining which stone that you want to work with. So I hope that answered that question. If anybody else runs across any stones that you're curious if they are both fire and water, let me know. I'd be happy to explore them. And I know they're out there. I tend to I tend to talk about and teach about stones that I work with. And there are lots of stones that I have that I work with. And some of them I bring to the table when it seems relevant. And sometimes I kind of set those aside and don't necessarily explore them unless somebody asks the question. So there you go. That's that question. All right. So here is another wonderful question. This question says, I am new to crystal work and just acquired a Shiva Lingam stone. Wondering what is the natural way to place the stone for recommended placement in the north area of your home facing east. I wondered also, does the stone stand up on the shorter side or lay down on its widest section? Thank you for any assistance. Well, this is really a great question because it gives us an opportunity to take a look at a gemstone or crystal that we happen to have, and particularly the Shiva Lingam in this case, because there's some unique ways that we can work with the Shiva Lingam. And so I brought some for you to take a peek at. They kind of clank around. So this is a Shiva Lingam, and it comes from India. And it is comprised of silicon dioxide. So it does have quartz within it, although it's not technically a member of the quartz family. And that'll be a video I'll just pop right up there about the quartz family, because I think that's always helpful for us to understand when we hear quartz, that's a broad grouping, and you can learn a little bit more. So this is part of the quartz family. It's going to have a Mohs hardness scale of about 7, more or less, probably about 7. And so it's fairly durable. And some stones are naturally shaped like this, and then some stones are hand shaped. In my work and in my experience, I find that the energy flow from a stone that is naturally shaped is the same as if it was shaped by a human hand, or either hand polished or shaped with a machine. It is helpful to have certain directions of different kinds of stones. Let me see. Oh, here, I'm going to reach this for a second. Here's a piece of pyrite, fool's gold. Okay, this is a naturally occurring cube. So if we had a stone that normally isn't a cube shape naturally, but was shaped into a cube, it's going to have some of the same structural, energetic properties, even though the stone itself and the properties of the stone are different. That same kind of square cubic energy is going to show up, whether it's naturally shaped or if it comes from handwork. So here we've got this beautiful Shiva Lingam. They come in a lot of different sizes. I have several in my home. In fact, there's one here that typically sits here. And you can look back and see that in other videos. And you'll notice how it is sitting. And so if you're going to have it sitting, I would say anchor it like this, okay? And the reason we're doing that is you have 2 ends of the Shiva Lingam, and the Shiva Lingam represents balance. We have this kind of feminine egg shape, and yet we also have this more masculine shape. And so we have also a north and a south. It doesn't matter which is which. You'll be able to determine which you choose to be your north or your south. And so when you place it, I typically will use a little bit of sand. In fact, I have another little one here. I hope it doesn't tip over. And so this is one that sits on one of my prayer altars, and it looks a little dusty because actually that is dust from the incense, the ash from the incense, that often I'll have sticks of incense placed within and around this. I will use sand. It can be sand you get from a sandbox. If you do that, I would just say take a little tea strainer or a colander and just get all the twigs and all the little seeds out so that you have some really nice sand. Sand is a beautiful way to hold a Shiva Lingam in this position. Sand is also silicon dioxide, so you don't have to be concerned that the sand is going to be harder on the Mohs scale and would scratch up your Shiva Lingam, okay? So this is how I would say you could place it if you want it for display. And sometimes you can find little stands. They're almost like, I don't have one with me this evening, but they're like a little sphere stand where you would have a little, it's almost like a ring that you could set this in. I've not had a lot of success getting the Shivas to stay in those really well. They keep toppling over, so I've found sand to be much better. So here's an example of working with a Shiva. If you wanted to have a Shiva Lingam, bringing in this balanced, masculine, feminine, balanced energy, you could place it anywhere in your home. Maybe it's in your work environment. Maybe it's on a bedside table. Working with the intention of this stone, helping you to shift what you're working on from a healing perspective is important. Because this represents both masculine and feminine, my suggestion would be for you is to be clear on what is it that is your healing intention. Are you asking for simply a balance of both masculine and feminine? And let me explain that. The masculine energy is the action, activity energy that we have in life. The feminine energy is that receptive, allowing, resting, and nurturing energy. And when we are balanced, we are able to hold both of those energies very effectively. Right now, I am very balanced, masculine and feminine. I'm very active with talking and exploring all these key questions that are arising. And I'm also very centered and grounded and balanced. So for me right now, if I wanted to work with this Shiva, I would say what we could do is work with the intention of having it continue to support and balance me. Okay? Now, maybe I'm supercharged and I'm not resting at all, and I'm just going a mile a minute, and I'm just do, and I'm lopsided, right? I would suggest then to bring in the intention of working with the feminine aspect of the Shiva to help bring my feminine energy back into balance so that I'm not so top heavy over here with the activity and I'm depleted and not resting and allowing myself to reset. So I hope that's helpful for you. If, on the other hand, let's say I'm just really, it's hard for me to get motivated. I'm just really wanting to really rest a lot, and I'm not sick, so it's not like we're trying to heal. I'm just feeling kind of, I'm just really sluggish. What I'm missing is the active masculine energy. In the traditional Chinese medicine, we know that as yang, which is that energy of the masculine, that active energy, and then the yin, that more quiet kind of resting energy. So if I'm really heavy in that feminine, I can work with the Shiva to support me to bring more of that masculine energy into my energy field and be balanced. So this is a fabulous stone to work with for this particular kind of balancing of the masculine and feminine. And, it could be that it's a very short-lived experience for you, that typically you may walk around really feeling pretty balanced, which is fabulous. It may be from time to time you work with a Shiva for this reason. There may be other times that this could be a growing area in your life. And so you're always working with Shiva from time to time. You're making it very important to engage in the stone and the healing properties to help make that happen. So that's Shiva. And I wanted to show you a couple other examples because, the question is really a great one, because sometimes we don't know how we're supposed to hold this stone, okay? Here is a smaller Shiva. Here's a smaller one yet. Don't want it to be crooked for you. I even have a very tiny one that I like to, show the kids, right? So working with these, again, you can put them in a little sand. And also, these are really great for holding or for placing on or around the body. What I would say is when you're working with a smaller stone that you're actually holding, and you could do this one if you're holding it too, but again, if we're starting to lay things all over the body, this starts getting a little heavy and it's got some weight to it. Think again, we've got the the two polarities. We also have kind of like a heaven and earth polarity. And it's that bringing down the heavenly energy and bringing up the earth energy that's also represented in the Shiva Lingam. So when I'm placing these stones, I then will determine which end to me is going to be the heaven or higher end, and which is going to be the earth end. And then I'm going to place that so that it is facing that same direction for me. So maybe I want to lay it at my heart and I'm laying down. And if I've decided that this is that upper, more spiritual side of things, and this is connecting more down into that earth, I might rest with it on my heart chakra, with that top part going up towards the top of my head to the crown chakra, and the other one directed down towards the root chakra. Holding it in the hand, I would say you could do it the same thing. Again, are we looking at bringing earth energy into the body? I might put that earth energy down and that more spiritual energy point up facing me. It might be that I feel like I want to really direct that energy more downward from the heavens down. I might change the position. This again, very much like we were talking about with the blue calcite and the Larimar, you can look at this stone, you can hold the stone, you can ask the stone which end should be pointed to the top of my head. And you'll just get a sense. And it is that easy. If we overthink it, then it's like our intuition just kind of got that little valve of intuition just got cranked down a bit. So what we're able to do is really draw that energy down or up as our inner guidance directs us. Okay. Sometimes I will, especially if I'm working with a client, it might be that it's placed way up at the top of their head, or it may be placed way down at the bottom of their feet, depending on what it is that they need. So you can work with these as well. This question does reference recommended placement in the north area of your home facing east. If that is something that you are learning about and being guided to work with, then I would say do that. Every tradition has different ways of explaining mystery, right? And so some traditions will talk about the directions and have a little different focus, like what north means to one tradition is different than what north means to another tradition. So I would say this is a brilliant question to sit with. What am I saying that makes sense? What are you feeling that makes sense to you? What is this other source? What are your sources? And then bringing it into you to do some discerning around what makes sense for you, what feels right for you. So I'm hoping that that is answering the question. Shiva are wonderful. Like I said, we have a lot of them. One of them I really wanted to come down and bring down here in my home office to show you. And honestly, it's so heavy that it wasn't practical. But it's very large. And so when we're working with any stone, we can have a really large one, which is beautiful, and we can have a very small one, which is beautiful, and they can work very effectively. Okay. So I'll set those aside. I have, looks like there is a question that came through here. I have a larger Shiva Lingam. I have it laying on its side on my shelf. Is that okay? Or should I place it so that it points upward? All right, there's a follow-up question, but I'm going to ask that one first. All right, that's really a good question. It goes back to you though. What is it that you have for the intention of this particular stone? I typically will display them this way because I'm connecting earth and heaven energy and it's filling the space with it. However, if you are feeling like what you want, and I'm going to use this one, I'm not going to take that one out of its sand, but if you're feeling that your Shiva feels right, resting on its side, leave it. There's no right or wrong way. There can be some ways that might be more beneficial, but it's kind of like doing a math problem. We can each do the same math problem. How we got to the answer might be totally different, and yet the result is what we're aiming for. So I would definitely encourage you to, if it's working for you and you feel like it feels right, do it. If you go, I'm going to go out and get some sand from, someplace and try setting it up, go for that too, right? Also, how do I determine which end is masculine or feminine? All right, so my sense is that you can ask it. And this really invites us into this place of trusting our inner knowing. We all have abilities to be able to connect with energetic, subtle energy, intuition. It could be that we kind of see the answer visually. Maybe what you see is, as you're looking here, you see a yes and a no. I mean, some people are literally able to just kind of in their mind's eye get a sense of which is which. Some might just feel like, yep, this is north. This is the upper part. This is the lower part. You can ask the question, is this the top? And then turn it over and go, oh no, this is the top. You're going to figure it out. So don't overthink it, but settle into that space of allowing. And so this is where closing your eyes, breathing gently, having that stone in your hand, asking the question, and then allowing the answer to come from within will be really helpful. And I hope that answered it. There are other ways. You could use a pendulum. If you're well skilled in working with a pendulum, you could ask. And if you're not skilled with a pendulum, I mean, maybe that's something you want to learn. You give me a call. I can talk with you about how I might be able to support you with that skill that you're learning. Go inside. Just trust yourself. Set aside any judgment about doing it right or wrong and just go, you know what? Which is which? Oh, there it is. And you just go with it. All right. I hope, and I'm not meaning to sound like I'm minimizing it. But it's literally letting go of this sense of we have to do it a certain way. Otherwise it's not going to work. That's not how it is. It's about being quiet, letting that inner nudge come forth, whether it is through vision or through a feeling or just a sensing or just a knowing that that's what it is. Okay. So I hope that answered that question. Yeah, good. All right. Here is another question. I am learning from you that crystals have different patterns inside of them, like square or triangle. Are there any stones that do not have a structure? So this is really good. This is great because this comes up from time to time as we're talking. In fact, I'm going to pull that pyrite cube back. So here we've got pyrite. And so the question is, I'm learning from you that crystals have different patterns inside of them. Yes. So if we were to look at the microscopically at the crystalline structure of the molecules, the way they're all stacked together and form this particular gemstone that we call pyrite, they are going to be square, cubic. It's called isometric. There are other stones also, and a lot of those stones, here's a piece right here, fluorite. This does not look like a cube at all. And yet, if we look at it microscopically, it's going to look exactly like this. And so this question is, are there stones that don't have that kind of an internal structure? Triangle, square, sometimes like hexagons. And yes, and they're known as amorphic stones. So I have some I wanted to show you. And the first one is jet. So when you take a look at jet, and this is really light, when you look at this stone, it's kind of can be not necessarily a giveaway because you can polish stones and make them, round. But this is a very natural occurring shape for the jet. It's got this kind of I think of like just this blob, right? There's no internal structure to hold it together. This is fossilized coal, and it is very, very helpful for supporting the energy field. When we think about our energy field, it's this kind of like sphere around us, right? And so that amorphic structure can help to support that sphere around us. And that's what jet does so beautifully, to help strengthen the energy field so that we are less likely to pick up cluttered, unnecessary energy from others. And we're able to kind of have some strong energetic boundaries. Just like normal personal boundaries, we want to have energetic boundaries as well. Here is a piece of snowflake obsidian. And snowflake obsidian is a form of volcanic lava. So it's glass. And if you think about melted molten glass, there is no internal structure to it. So again, this can be really helpful when we are working on, again, with this rounded energy field around us, and also the fiery component of the obsidian, because it's lava. It comes from a volcano. It's going to be really helpful for working with this kind of more encompassing kind of energy. Think of it that way. Sometimes I'm going to reach the pyrite. I should just keep it next to me, shouldn't I? So sometimes we can work with a piece of pyrite that's really anchoring to the ground, and that can help us strengthen our energy field. Yet I find with the amorphic stones, they're not even stones, they're mineraloids. They kind of get glopped in with gemstones. When working with those mineraloids, they really, in my experience, are very comprehensive of holding in and working with that larger energy field. Here is a piece of amber. Amber is tree sap, right? And so we've all seen the sap drip from the tree, and sometimes we make syrup or eat syrup. And so there's no crystalline structure to that amber. It's very much a mineraloid, and it's got this gentle grounding, and yet it's very inclusive. Maybe that would be a word that I could gently attach to the mineraloids. All right. This is kind of inclusive, whole encompassing kind of energy, even though each of the three stones I already have talked with you about are quite different. We've got jet, which is coal, and we've got obsidian, which is lava, and then we've got amber, petrified tree sap. Not all of those mineraloids are going to show up as spheres or shiny. Here's another piece of amber. Okay, so knowing your stones is important, and that I would say goes with any stone. A couple other amorphic kinds of stones that again are very helpful for clearing out the electromagnetic field, which is our aura, our biofield, is shungite. And shungite is a particular form of carbon. It is carbon 60. And the easiest way for me to describe what this structure looks like internally is if you have ever seen a picture of like the Epcot Center or a geodesic dome, where we have points and then there are little when you're building, you'd have points and little structures that are straight, and you put all those together and you start getting this sphere. It's almost like a soccer ball. That's what the carbon internally does. And so while it has a structure, there's nothing in the center. It's more of like the structure is on the outside, and it's kind of interconnected. So this is a mineraloid, and it'll also sometimes show up like this. Excuse me. This is a leech jungite. You can see it's quite jagged, very friable, and can be very, very helpful, again, in clearing that electromagnetic field. And so when we're working with stones that are amorphic, or again, mineraloids that are amorphic, think about the particular quality of the stone, the properties, what elements they resonate with. And again, if you're new to my system of elements, you can go ahead and take a look at some of the other information I've got. You can always reach out to me and I can give you some more direction as well. So we're working with the properties of the stone, the type of minerals contained within the stone, and the structure of the stone and how it resonates with that particular structure. All those go together to help us benefit from the gemstones and crystals that we work with. If you were to work with a piece of jet and somebody else were to work with a piece of jet, you might be working with them for two entirely different reasons and getting entirely different experiences, and yet the end result is that you experience the healing that you were looking for. So I hope that's helpful. So it's kind of like sometimes one question leads to the next, and we start exploring one thing, one aspect about crystal healing, and that opens the door to the next one. And so that's another reason why I like to offer these Q&As every month, so that you can build upon your understanding of the gemstones and crystals, and to be able to have time, sometimes perhaps even during month to month, that you've experienced some healing with maybe some of the stones that we've been talking about, because that's how we really ultimately are able to benefit from them. Okay. This is a great question. Okay. Just checking my chat. Okay, looks good. What is the difference between optical calcite and selenite? They look very much the same. Wonderful. So I'm going to grab, here's that blue calcite again. So if you remember, calcite's fire, right? All calcites are fire. There's no test, but that would be the answer, right? And I want to show you an example of the optical calcite that is being asked about. You can see my hand right through there, right? It's very transparent. It is actually double refractive. So if I look, for example, with this question, I'm seeing double words. Everything's doubled, no matter how I hold it. And so that tells me that we've got some dimensional work that this stone can help us with. When I work with optical calcite, I find that it is very helpful in supporting these upper chakras, the brow, crown, and even the chakras, those energy centers that are considered or called transpersonal. It means they're off our personhood, they're off our body, and they work much higher up in the energy field. So this particular piece of calcite is fire. And also, it's a very powerful storm element stone, which means there's lots of transformation that can take place. So calcite is a calcium carbonate. And then selenite, and you can see there are some real similarities, aren't there? Of course, you can't see through this particular piece of selenite. Most selenite you can't quite see through. It tends to be more milkier. This is a hydrous, I'm going to double check, hydrous calcium sulfate. So when we hear the word hydrous, we know that there is a water component. And this is a 3 on the Mohs hardness scale, the optical calcite. And this is a 2. This is going to get pretty mushy if it gets wet. If you have ever seen sheetrock or built a home or been someplace where somebody is working with sheetrock, that is gypsum. That's the same exact mineral as what is in the selenite. And so you can imagine or know from personal experience what happens when sheetrock gets wet. It's a chalky, mucky mess. And so there is a hardness difference, and the properties are different as well. The other thing that I like about this particular selenite is that it's a wind element stone. It really works up in this brow and crown chakra, and it is really helpful for clearing out the energy field. You may have seen other videos where I talk about selenite, and one of the things I like doing a lot with my crystal healing work and for myself personally is taking a piece of selenite and running it over the energy field, maybe just a couple inches away, maybe a little bit further, but it has to, in my experience, be fairly close to the body because our energy field has different layers. And we're working on clearing that energy field within about anywhere from 1 to maybe about 6 or 7 or 8 inches. And that's where working with a piece of selenite, working it down the body from head to feet can be very, very helpful. I wanted to show you also that this is a piece of clear quartz, silicon dioxide, also known as rock crystal. And you can see that this one actually is fairly milky. And again, it might have a real kind of similar, appearance. So this is, again, why it's important for you to know what your stones are. And if you don't know, reach out to me. I mean, sometimes I'll ask people to go ahead and snap a picture and send it to me. And sometimes I'm able to determine what it is, and sometimes I can't. But it's certainly worth for sure knowing what your gemstones are. So we've got the selenite at a 2 on a Mohs hardness scale. We've got the optical calcite at a 3. And then we have the quartz at a 7. So there are differences in their appearance, their structure. This is a hexagonal, trigonal kind of internal structure. And this is going to be much more of a linear. So I wanted to just show you that because I think that's a good question. And when you're working with the stones, I have talked about it before. If you're going to be seriously working with gemstones and crystals for healing, I would encourage you to get a notebook or a journal that's dedicated to your work so that you are able to really dig into what is arising for you with your particular healing experience. Okay, just getting over the sniffles a little bit. So when you're working with gemstones, let's take this selenite and the optical calcite back. I would encourage you to work with each one separately. I would encourage you to describe them physically, how big they are, what they feel like. This is about a 4 by 5 centimeter by about 3 centimeter shape. And notice its qualities, characteristics, properties, and what it's like when you work with them. And I have videos about what do I mean, how to work with a crystal. So that way you know the kind of results you received, the information you were looking for. Did you get the answer? Because maybe the questions you were asking or you were seeking some healing related to a particular situation and that optical calcite really supported you, then that's what you're going to want to perhaps go back to again and again and again as you're moving through some of that healing. Okay. Here was a question. Oh, this was a fun question. For my birthday, I was given a piece of amethyst that is in the shape of what I think is called a tower. How should I use it? So if you're not familiar with amethyst, amethyst is one of the 5 members of the quartz family. It's a purple form of quartz. It can be very pale lavender all the way to a very, very deep violet. And depending often on what part of the world it originated in. So when we're talking about a tower is a gemstone or a crystal that is either naturally or hand shaped so that it has a flat base and then stands upright. And so I brought some examples to show you a little bit about how you can work with those. So for example, here is a rose quartz tower. So just like I was mentioning when we were talking about the selenite and the optical calcite, I would want to know about rose quartz. I want to know its properties. I want to know how hard it is. I want to know if you're working with me or in the system of elements that I work with, then I would want to know what element or elements does it resonate with? How does it support physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual healing? Because those are all aspects that I think are important for us to be aware of. And just because rose quartz in the book says that it's really helpful for nurturing self-compassion, that doesn't mean anything to me or perhaps to you unless we actually do the work with the stone and begin to experience a softening of our view of ourselves so that we are able to hold more self-compassion. So working with a tower then intentionally can look like, I'm going to set this right by me while I do my work, because it's going to remind me every time I look at it that I am an amazingly loving person. And so it can reflect back the intention we're placing within it. It could be that you want to work with a tower as part of a crystal grid system. I would say that would be an ideal stone to go right in the center of that grid, because when we're working with crystal grids, that center stone is that point out of which the rest of the grid energy is going to flow, and the intention that we're placing within that grid is going to flow. And I've got videos about working with crystal grids, and one of my free mini courses is about working with crystal grids. And I also have Crystal Grids 1, which is a course, a paid course where you can explore much more deeply crystal healing. So that, or working with crystal healing and grid. So that's that. Here's another example. This is a tower of rhodonite. Rhodonite is a stone that resonates with fire. And so here we've got this beautiful hand-shaped tower that brings in this fiery energy, again, into a grid, into a work environment, into your home. When we have stones that are shaped like this, they are so lovely that even if we're not even aware of what their properties are, just gazing upon them is pleasing and soothing and can help us feel better and heal something. So again, learning about the stone, its qualities, its properties, what element it resonates with. Here are a couple other examples I wanted to show you. And these are selenite towers. Just here's that selenite again. What I would say is, if I'm working with towers, I'm not going to hold this and pull it through my energy field. It's not designed for that. There are various sizes of wands. And if you're curious about what that might look like, just go out and visit my online shop. You can get a better idea. But these are, again, wonderful focal points. Maybe sitting someplace on a table where you consider that to be your sacred space. Perhaps setting it next to your bed so that when you're sleeping at night, you're bringing in the qualities of the gemstones and crystals centered within a grid again. So this is what I would say are some kind of examples for you when you're thinking about what those towers bring to healing. So imagining that this person was given this beautiful amethyst tower, I can just imagine how gorgeous it is. And so this tower directs the energy up, whether it is lots of points or lots of facets coming up to one point, like it is with these two, or more graduated. You can just see that you have a wider base that's slowly bringing that energy up, and then that fills our space, our room, our home, our work environment. One of the things I like to do is from time to time, if I feel like I really want to support somebody with healing who's asked for my help, we always want to ask for help, right? What I will sometimes do is bring in one of my towers and perhaps another stone or two, and I might place that next to their picture. I might place some of those stones around a piece of paper that has their name on it, maybe place a flower or something that I know is meaningful to them, because then we can create a very powerful prayer space, a sacred space, benefiting with the prayer intentions that we're placing within it, the well wishes that we're placing within it, as well as the properties of the stones. Okay. So I hope that answered that question. And again, feel free, if I haven't completely answered your question, to let me know. There's one other question that I was asked. It didn't come through specifically for this crystal Q&A that I do, but it is something that actually I get asked it a lot. So I thought I'm just going to answer it kind of more generally, and I even have notes to make sure I don't miss things. So the question actually came in from somebody who has been working with the crystals through these Q&As. And the question is, which of your crystal classes would be good to start with? And I think that's a fair question. So if you've been working with gemstones and crystals for quite some time, and you have a sense that you have a general idea of how you work with them, how to identify them, how to know which stone is most helpful for certain situations, I would say perhaps you would want to explore my advanced crystal healing class that is set up specifically for people who have either done some preliminary work or already have experience. And so these more details are always available through my online school, and you can get the link below this video. But with this specific question, what would be a good class to start with? Of course, I would say my digging deeper into crystal healing would be really helpful. And I printed this up because there's so much in the course, but I wanted to make sure I didn't forget something. First of all, one of the things that this particular course does is it brings together the basic components of energy healing, the chakra system, how the chakra system connects up with well-being and healing and being healthy, right? So bringing that in and then working with the chakra system as a base point to then bring the crystals in. We talk about in that course the 5 elements that I reference: earth, fire, water, wind, storm. So you get a better sense about how, again, those elements show up in life. You receive a collection of gemstones with the course that you're then able to work with and keep, and we explore those stones, and you work with those stones, and there are guided meditations, and there are videos, and there's downloadable content. There is a mentoring session, a one-on-one, either virtually or in person, where you and I would explore what's been kind of arising, what you're learning, where the glitches are, so that I can be of support to you. There are, as I mentioned at the beginning, that there are always quizzes that I put in there, and they're not sticks to kind of beat ourselves up with, but they are ways for us to check our learning and then go back and maybe refocus on some of the content that might have just slipped our mind. So that would be the course I would recommend. It can be completed within about 3 to 6 weeks if somebody wanted to, move through it fairly quickly, but there are pause points to make sure that we're getting that information settled in and having experience with the information as well. So I wanted to answer that question that gets asked all the time. So we've had some good questions. We've kind of talked about fire, water, gemstones. We talked about Shiva Lingam and amorphic stones or mineraloids, right? We talked about how to differentiate optical calcite, selenite. I even threw in some quartz because at first glance, sometimes you're not quite sure what you've got. And so again, learning the qualities of the stones, the properties, their mineral composition, how hard they are, all of that is so important. And then we talked about the towers and how to bring in healing into an environment, whether it is with the tower, whether it is with the Shiva Lingam, however it is in your life. So I hope you found this helpful. Next month, we are going to be, I'm looking for my note, we are going to be gathering again for my next live Q&A on Thursday, March 21st from 6 to 7 p.m. I will get the replay out within the next few days, and just watch for links for next month's live Q&A. It's been a real treasure and a pleasure for me to be able to answer your questions and reconnect with you. Enjoy the month and continued blessings as you explore crystal healing. Be well.